Greetings, and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And we are at the start of a brand new month, the last month of the year, and who would have believed that this show would actually make it all the way to the end of the year, much less be the only show on this channel that actually never missed a single week all year. So I'm actually pretty proud of that. And to celebrate the end of a new year and the regeneration into the next year, if you will, today, this whole month will be just celebrating the regeneration, one of the best plot devices ever introduced into the show, and if I'm being quite honest, one of the best plot devices in all of fictional storytelling, television or otherwise. And right here to talk this wonderful topic with me is my very good friend, Regeneration X. How have you been doing there with Regeneration? I see the Regeneration energy was too powerful. You blew out all the lights in your place.
Not the damn lights out. You never can tell. You never can tell. It could go either real soft, where there's just heads floating around me, or all the lights burst and everything sets on fire. You know, this happens.
Yeah. To quote the 10th Doctor, regeneration, it's a lottery.
That's true.
And speaking of lottery, I have no good way of making good segue or transition, but yeah, the birthday section this week. I guess that this is where the lottery connection comes in. They're very disappointing birthday week from the week of the 29th of November up to the 5th of December. Yeah, not a lot of people, and really I was kind of desperate when looking at the list. It's a very interesting window of time. Just a lot of really big names were either the week before or the week after, but not this particular week for some stupid reason. At least we got two companions on here, so that's something. But yeah, we said from the 29th all the way to the 5th, and on the 29th, starting us off, we have Michael Craze. He played the character Ben Jackson, a companion of the first Doctor and second Doctor, for about a season, more or less. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1998, which is like a year before Doctor Who Big Finish audios were starting to be produced. So unfortunately, we never got to see more from this character, from this actor playing his character on Big Finish. But yeah, at least he still had that one signature run on the Doctor Who proper one, as one of the earliest companions ever. Also on the 29th, we have Naoko Mori. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name, as people who watch this show regularly already know by now. I am terrible with names, but she played the character Toshiko Sato in the Torchwood series. Obviously, she made her debut in Doctor Who proper in the episode Aliens of London, but then sort of pseudo reprised her role in the first two seasons of Torchwood, and she continues to play that character still to this day on the Torchwood range on Big Finish. Also on the 29th, we have Gemma Chen. She has one Doctor Who credit to her name, that being the character of Mia Bennett in the Waters of Mars episode, but obviously she's kind of a MCU regular at this point. She has been in both Captain Marvel and the Eternals movie, and presumably she will come back if they ever decide to make another Eternals movie there. On the 30th of November, no picture, but yeah, we have Mr. Peter Tyler. Are you familiar with Peter Tyler?
Not by name.
Well, you've never heard of Peter Tyler in Doctor Who?
Can't place it.
That's that's Rose Tyler's father on the show.
Well, I knew the last name Tyler. I didn't know those. I didn't place it Peter Tyler being. Well, we know her mom.
But if you were thinking that this is the actor's birthday, Sean Dingwall, You would be incorrect because there was actually a guy called Peter Tyler who was a model unit DOP on Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, Christopher Eccleston's final episode. I just thought it was pretty funny that there was literally a guy called Peter Tyler working alongside Rose Tyler in the season where they introduced the character Peter Tyler. That was kind of funny to me. Yeah, but like I said, no image, and obviously if you go Google Peter Tyler Doctor Who, you're gonna find pictures of the character Peter Tyler, not the actual person Peter Tyler. So yeah, that funny bit of goof by
Oh
me
boy.
aside. Also on the 30th of November, we have Mr. John Bishop,
Ah,
recently played one of the more recent companions to Doctor Who, um, Dan Lewis, who recently left the Doctor in the most recent episode, The Power of the Doctor, but he's been a companion all throughout Flux and Jodie Whittaker's last three specials.
mhm.
On the 30th, again, we have Mr. Dean Lennox Kelly, who played William Shakespeare in David Tennant's second season. His only credit still to this day, but it's one of Soda's favorite episodes, and Soda's a massive, massive fan of William Shakespeare, so I decided to keep it in there. On the 1st of December, we have Mr. Deep Roy. Obviously, I mostly know him from playing the Oompa Loompas in the Tim
Mhm.
Burton version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but he also played Mr. Sin in the infamously one of the most racist Doctor Who episodes of all time, The Talons of Wang Chiang. Yeah,
Ooh,
if you're gonna have to watch that episode, I'd recommend it. Just put all the racism aside. At the heart of it, there's a good story in there somewhere. It just happens to involve a lot of racist Asian stereotypes and yellowface. But I
oh boy.
promise the story is good, and it really spawned a lot of great stuff that came out of the episode, like the Jago and Lightfoot spin-off series that
Ooh.
originated from that episode.
Oh,
So
okay.
again, just put into context, this is how they made Doctor Who back in those days, but
Not
it's a
not
really
great.
enjoyable story all the way through. Also on December 1st, we have Catherine Drysdale. She only appeared in one episode of Doctor Who, Love and Monsters. Definitely not one of the most memorable Doctor Who episodes, but she has a couple of Big Finish credits to her name, particularly in Out of Time, the first Out of Time, Diary of River Song Series 6, and Echoes of Extinction. It's one of the names you hear pretty regularly all over the Big Finish realm.
Okay.
Also on December 1st, we have Dennis Spooner, very recognizable name from the classic series. He was a writer of several episodes from the first couple of seasons of Doctor Who, namely The Reign of Terror, The Romans, The Time Meddler, and a few episodes of the Daleks' Master Plan and The Power of the Daleks, as well as being the script editor for The Crusade, The Romans, The Web Planet, The Space Museum, The Chase, and The Rescue.
It's a busy guy.
And and finally, on December 4th, we have Ronnie Corbett. He played, yeah, he was in a Sarah Jane Adventures special playing an ambassador who was then, spoilers for a very old special, he
Oh
was
boy.
revealed to be a Slovene. And it was a children in need special. It only was only like a couple of minutes long. It should not be taken any seriously at all, but yeah, it's a really fun special, and I highly recommend checking that one out. So yeah,
An
the
English institution, Ronnie Corbett.
yeah. So to the lovely list of people we had today, thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you. And speaking of things in Doctor Who that we could not do this show, this one, the one that we're talking about right here. Speaking of people who we could not do the show without,
Ooh.
Regeneration.
Uh-huh.
It's a great introduction to the world of Doctor Who. Obviously, uh, the circumstances not really pleasing. William Hartnell, uh, his health situation was getting consistently worse from episode to episode, from season to season, to the point where he could not remember lines anymore. His mind just sort of drifted while they were filming. It happened. It caused a lot of issues during filming, and obviously this is still in the '60s. They could not afford to make too many cuts, and
No,
if you actually watch those old William Hartnell episodes, William Hartnell, I don't think there's a single serial or even single episode where Hartnell just doesn't flub at least two or three lines
I'm
in any
watching
given.
right now. I'm going through the William Hartner years and stuff like that, and you can tell that these are one cut takes. They're just gonna get like guys just do the best you can and stuff like that. These guys didn't even save the film right. Like the BBC was running this on a shoestring budget. To imagine what they got out of that, how much they pulled from that minuscule amount of money is pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, and now obviously a lot of actors also flubbed a couple of lines during those early Hartnell days,
Mhm.
but none of them is quite as much as old Bill Hartnell, as his friends used to call him back then, did. So it's not the blame is not squarely on him, but obviously it was just a case of not being aware of his current health situation. So under these unfortunate circumstances, the show creator at the time, Sidney Newman, came up with this great idea to introduce into the show's context the concept of regeneration, the idea that when Time Lords die essentially or are fatally wounded, they regenerate, becoming a completely different person. And that was an easy way of recasting the role, continuing on with the story of the show as it was, just have a completely different actor in the role with a completely different personality, which then just opened the doors and opened the floodgates for many, many more storytelling opportunities. And obviously, this is the gift that keeps on giving, because now anything is possible with these types of storytelling tools. Essentially, that is how we continuously get to have more and more and more new doctors every once in a while. We get to have more masters every once in a while. That's how we can still keep having the meddling monk on Big Finish, several different incarnations of that, several different other Time Lords who were on the show proper. They brought them to Big Finish, but for one reason or another, they couldn't reuse the same actors, so they just recast them and said that it was a regeneration. Well, not so recently, but the Ronnie is another character that they tried to bring back to Big Finish. They even contacted the late great Kate O'Mara, and she basically she said, "Yeah, I'll do it." They had all the scripts written. They were about to start recording, and a couple of weeks before that, she unfortunately passed away, but they already had the storyline already written and prepared. So they just consulted with Kate O'Mara's estate and just recast the role and said that there was a future incarnation of the Ronnie that the Doctor just hasn't met yet, and that all the storylines that were going that happened with the Ronnie on the show was in her past, but the Doctor's future. So yeah, that like I said, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and
It's
we're
lightning in
quite
a bottle. That idea was lightning in a bottle. Just
definite. Yeah,
it continues to affect the show 60 years later. The show's been running for 60 years. Well, besides the little break there, called the
yeah,
90s or whatever. But
and the reason that the show continues to be in well on television still to this day, what came from that idea?
mhm.
Like, I don't think anyone knew that the show was going to last 60 years. I don't think they had any idea that the show was going to last 10 years, much less 60. But that idea was just a stroke of brilliance uh, that came from the mind of the legendary Mr. Uh, Sidney Newman. And obviously, if it wasn't for Patrick Troughton's performance as the second Doctor, we would not be able to continue to have this gift keep on giving. Now, Patrick Troughton is not my favorite Doctor, not by a long shot, but still, to just take the ball and run with it the way that he did, to step into the shoes of William Hartnell, he should be commended for it, regardless of your opinions on the Doctor itself. I think.
I
Now,
enjoy him. I
obviously,
really like him.
yeah, I mean, he's
He's a
fun.
bit of
Just
clown. He's a bit of a clown.
he's a bit of a clown. He really introduced a lot of these elements that have become staples of the Doctors that came after him. It all stems from him. But
Hmm.
when I pair him up against all the other mainline Doctors,
Yeah.
he's not really one of my favorites out of those. I should say. But obviously, we are not going to just discuss all the every single regeneration here, every single detail of every single regeneration, because I already have an hour and 45-minute video over on my channel discussing in great detail every single regeneration episode, every single different step of a regeneration. It's called the 10 Steps of Regeneration. I spent a lot of time and effort working on that on that video. I highly suggest checking that one out. So that little plug aside, what we're going to do is just talk about the regenerations themselves. Now, I have sent you the um, the video that was uploaded live to the Doctor Who YouTube channel a month ago, but I should say.
Hmm.
And you watch that has all the regenerations in it. It was live. If you actually look really closely towards the end of it, you'll find me in the comments in the live chat, just
Oh.
chatting, just chatting with a couple of people there. So
Oh boy.
again, another small plug there. But so today, for the purposes of today's video, we will only be focusing on the classic series, Regenerations, from the first Doctor all the way up to the seventh. And yeah, so obviously, let's talk about the first Doctor. Before I show the clip that I specifically edited for today's episode, we're going to be talking about the original regeneration scene
Right.
from the 10th planet, not the recreation in Twice Upon a Time, because that's still a part of the modern series. So, have you seen the 10th planet, by the way? Because I believe the final episode is missing,
Right. No,
unfortunately.
I haven't seen it, and I knew that it was missing. There's that a bunch of the second Doctor ones missing as well. That's what I was saying before. They just didn't. They It's almost like they didn't give a shit because they only spent $25 per episode or whatever it was on this
Pretty
thing,
much.
and their tapes just disintegrated. They never
Yeah,
backed them up. Yep.
it's a peculiarly odd thing for the 10th planet that all the first three episodes are still around. It's just the fourth one, the last one, arguably the most important one, the one who William Hartnell regenerates. That's the one they decided to get rid of.
Right.
It's like, how how who, who decided that? Now I get it. And back in the late 60s and in the 70s, they threw out a lot of episodes because they didn't think they had value anymore. And I didn't understand how what they were smoking at the time. But still, looking at some of the episodes that were thrown out, I can understand why they didn't think they'd have replay value at the time. But that one, like,
Yeah.
you have the other three, but
Bizarre.
that one you throw out? I don't know. But
Bizarre.
thankfully, fortunately, William Hartnell's final moments have actually survived from that uh, throwing out of the episode. And obviously, the final episode has been recreated in animated form
Okay.
for anyone to watch. But yeah, so before we jump into it, tell me what you know about the 10th planet itself, if you've ever seen parts of it or heard parts of it.
Nope, I don't know very much about the 10th planet. It's something that I'm going up to. As I'm going through the show again, I haven't I haven't wanting to skip ahead and stuff like that. That was something I was thinking of doing going into the show when we were talking about doing the regenerations. Do I want to watch the final arcs of these things? But if I figured if I did that, why am I bothering watching all the other episodes anyways? I'm getting
Yeah,
yeah, no, I just want to get to it organically. So I haven't seen the 10th planet yet. Plus, I knew that the last one was missing, and that would have drove me nuts. Would have drove me nuts. So it's a matter of trying to find the animated version that I know there's that one for that one. There's a bunch for Patrick Troughton's Doctor as well. So trying to track those down is going to be the next thing as soon as I start getting closer to the end of Hartnell's run.
Yeah, so thank you for clarifying that. So for all these regeneration episodes, obviously spoilers are plenty,
Yeah,
but because
100%.
you haven't seen those episodes, I'm going to just avoid spoilers as much as possible.
Hmm.
Not going to talk about the episode itself. We're just going to talk about the regeneration scene itself.
Right.
And obviously, in that video that I mentioned earlier of the hour and 45 minutes, there are several steps like inciting incident, what causes regeneration,
Hmm.
what the doctor's final words, and all that. It's all there in that video. If you or anybody watching has any interest of it, you're more than welcome to check that out. But basically, long story short, the doctor was just getting too old
Yeah.
in real life and on in universe. The doctor's body, as he puts it, was wearing a bit thin and just almost like a caterpillar turning into a chrysalis and then turning into a butterfly. He needed to break through the shell of his first body and regenerate into his second body to just keep on going. Now, a lot of it sort of has to do with certain plot points from other episodes where the Doctor has either aged significantly during the course of a single episode or had some of his life force taken out of him. Unfortunately, those episodes are also missing, so you're going to have to just guess how that happened.
Perfect.
But yeah, these things and more sort of led to the Doctor's body just being too uh, just unable to continue in a way, which obviously on in real world, William Hartnell's deteriorating health kind of led to him being left out of certain episodes completely so that he can have time to rest. He was still credited on the episodes. Some of those episodes he did actually have lines. Just he was off screen.
Oh,
They wrote into the plot of the episode he was just invisible for about half of the episode, so that he can still take a rest and only record lines as opposed to being on set, setting them into the cameras. But yeah, his body was just wearing a bit thin. He just couldn't go on anymore. Even in that episode itself, he sort of passed out a couple of times. Not the actor, obviously. The
in
uh,
character.
in the character sort of passed out and sort of lost conscious. Had brief moments of losing consciousness. He lost consciousness in a again no spoilers in the setting where the final episode takes place in. And upon being released from that place that he was in, the spoilery place that he was in, he his companion, and I swear again, I don't know how this keeps happening with the birthday section, but his companion at the time, Ben Jackson, played by Michael Craze, walks up to him and says, uh, "You all right, Doctor? Wakey, wakey! It's all over now." And William Hartnell, in his final few moments, playing that character, sort of saying, "What did you say, my boy? It's all over. That's what you said." No, but it isn't all over. It's far from being all over. Obviously, that whole sequence was recreated in Twice Upon a Time, but we're not going to talk about that one yet. Now, he immediately made the decision that he needs to go back into the TARDIS. He goes back into the TARDIS with his coat, and then obviously through Once Upon a Time, he then has an adventure with his 12th incarnation, goes back into his TARDIS, collapses onto the floor, and then this happens. Now, again, this is the original scene from the 10th Planet, which is why it takes a bit longer in
Yeah.
the and Twice Upon a Time. This whole scene was slightly sped up, but we see here the changing of the faces from William Hartnell all the way to Patrick Troughton. Kind of wish they didn't have the camera this close to their face, so it would be a little bit easier to make out what's happening. But that whole effect that you saw there with the lighting That was achieved completely by accident.
Oh,
It was
okay.
like the
Because they only had $30 to spend on the entire episode.
pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. It was like the editor. I think the original idea was to have just the image of Patrick Troughton superimposed on the image of William Hartnell
Mhm.
to signify the change, but the editor sort of noticed that if you overlay a third layer on it, they could shine sort of a light on the face, which actually made it look a bit more sci-fi, in his
Right.
opinion. Which then originated the idea that regeneration energy is sort of this big bright energy thing that causes regeneration. But that was more or less the effect that they continue to use and restructure and recreate and reimagine in all the other regenerations that came after it. But let's talk a little bit about that scene in and of itself, because
Yeah.
it's a very intriguing scene. Obviously, like I said, the episode is missing, but that whole sequence is still survived to this day somehow. But it's sort of the film itself is a little muddied and it's a little hard to see in that scene. But if you actually notice in that scene itself, while the doctor is just standing there, it's like William Hartnell is looking at something right out of the field of vision of the camera, with like the audience can't really see. All the controls and the dials and the levers are flickering all on their own, and some say that you can see a mysterious figure
Ooh.
standing near standing in the TARDIS console room, right at where William Hartnell happens to be looking towards at that moment. And then years and years later, decades later, when they made An Adventure in Time and Space, the sort of
Mhm.
biopic of
Oh, I know where you're going now. Okay.
the biopic of William Hartnell and the first few seasons of the show, they included that scene in there. And Mark Gaddis, the producer and director of that special episode, included the idea that it was actually the 11th Doctor, played by Matt Smith, that William Hartnell was looking at, and he was the mysterious figure that, according to legend, was in that scene with him, and he's the reason why all the dials are flickering on and off. That was a really cool
Yeah.
fan moment there. Obviously, whether or not it was real, take your pick. But it was really cool, I think, that Mark Gaddis used the myth from that episode and put it into his special biopic about William Hartnell and first few seasons of the show. But yeah, so what do we think about this regeneration scene with William Hartnell?
I really like it actually. As simple as it is, it gets your point across. This was 19. What year was this? 1967,
66.
66. I think that yeah, and considering the shoestring budget, I think they did actually a pretty remarkable job considering it was basically a show made on a dirt poor budget for kids. That's what at least that's what the BBC had in their heads anyways is what it was for. What they yeah, I thought that the actual regenerate it's not my least favorite regeneration, I can tell you that right now. I think it's simple, but I think it gets the point done. Um, I wish like I can't remember in that next episode when you get to see the second Doctor. Is he wearing the first Doctor's clothes?
No, that's
Okay,
the weird thing. Like, he regenerates already wearing his second Doctor's outfit. Really, the only remnant of the first Doctor was the big long cloak
right.
that William Hartnell was wearing at that time. And he goes like to a different room and starts rummaging through some of the stuff and replaces that cloak with the long frog coat that the second Doctor was wearing.
Hmm.
Now, if you were to put modern day context into things, obviously, when Jodie Whittaker regenerated, her clothes sort of changed as well into the David Tennant 14th Doctor.
Hmm.
Is it an homage to that? Or is something else going on? We don't know yet. But I think it's really interesting to note that the second Doctor was already wearing the second Doctor's costume. If you actually look at, obviously, again, that episode is also missing, BBC. But if you actually look at set photos taken at that time and the few surviving clips from that episode one of The Power of the Daleks, Patrick Troughton is wearing a completely neatly different costume to what William Hartnell was wearing when they filmed the regeneration scene, and they recreated that in both of the animated recreations, because there are two animated recreations of The Power of the Daleks, and in both of them you can see Will Patrick Troughton has a completely different wardrobe than his predecessor. So I like that they kept that instead of trying to fix things by saying no, the second Doctor was still wearing the first Doctor's outfit and then changed his clothes. So I like that they kept that detail in there. But yeah. So should we talk about the second Doctor then?
Yeah.
Now,
His regeneration, uh, odd. It was odd,
yeah, it's
but funny.
pretty
It's a funny episode, but it's
pretty
odd.
clear. So that episode is the War Games. You have seen that one, or have you not?
I've seen this one before, but it's been a while. I remember. It's because I can't remember which Time Lord's laws he breaks, but they make they. This is the one about forced regeneration, and it got into my head because of the 14th Doctor's forced regeneration with the hands of the Master. So yeah, I went back to see what it was like or whatever, and yeah, it's different. I was pretty shocked that the one Time Lord near the end, the one with the dark hair, after he's been sentenced, looks remarkably, and I mean absolutely spot on to Noel Gallagher from Oasis. I couldn't get it out of my head. Like
Okay,
he regenerated. It like that guy is Noel Gallagher.
okay,
Shocking.
that's pretty cool. But when you
Hmm.
say you watch this, did you watch just the regeneration scene?
I watched
Did
yes, like I've seen the episode, but
all
I'm trying
10
to
parts
remember
of
what
it?
it's. Yeah. Well, no. That like the episode of like where he's regenerating and stuff like that, and he goes before the Time Lords and stuff like that, and says all the stuff about getting to choose which Doctor he was going to be.
Yeah, so the War Games 10-part story,
Yeah.
really cool episode, very great story, but the last part of it is entirely focused on trying to get away from the Time Lords, then being on trial by the Time Lords and sentenced to regeneration,
Right.
and exile on Earth. Which is, by the way, just that whole creative decision. We talked about how the creative decision of regeneration changed the face of the franchise forever. That whole decision, the show was in its sixth season at the time, and the showrunners at the time, I believe it was an exiting showrunner at the time, just made a decision that completely changed the face of the show for the next few years, of just having the next incarnation of the Doctor be entirely earthbound. The third Doctor, for all of his great sci-fi adventures, a lot of his episodes took place on Earth as
Hmm.
part of Unit, which obviously that's how they made Unit a much larger part of the narrative of the show. But just a decision like that completely dictates a lot of the future Doctor's tenure. That is a decision that I don't think has been made since, at least not on the TV side of Doctor Who. Just, and obviously they do have some plot changes here and there from time to time. I One of the things that really comes to mind is when they made in Capaldi's last season, there was a couple
Yeah.
of episodes where he was blind.
Yes.
So just introducing that and having it be a central theme of the next couple episodes, I thought that was very bold and reminiscent of that decision. But obviously, the show being what it is today in the modern context, they got rid of that whole storyline pretty quickly. So I would really much appreciate if they go back to that sort of ballsy storytelling mode of just making a decision that changes the way, or rather the format of the show, at least for a couple of years, and then bringing it back to form. That is really a decision that I think it's not talked about enough in today's modern context. But obviously, after being on trial and presenting his case magnificently with a great speech to the other Time Lords, basically, after the Time Lords decided to send him to exile on Earth in the 20th century, they never specified a year, which obviously started a whole unit dating controversy, which is still going on till this day. It's a discussion that will never end, I'm afraid. But yeah, the Doctor then goes through a series of different phases to choose from, rejecting all of them, and then the Time Lords just make the decision for him, lock him up in some weird chamber, and then this starts happening. Now,
Yeah,
you can assume that the chamber that they locked him up in, and then this thing happens, is
kaleidoscope.
yeah, it's similar to the chamber from The Power of the Doctor, where the Master sort of regenerates
Oh, okay, yeah, yep,
Doctor into her. But obviously, you can't really see it, so you can take your guess at what that chamber actually looks like. But yeah, that's pretty much what the regeneration scene looked like back in the day. Now, obviously, they're not going to show us the face because they haven't actually cast the actor yet by this
yeah.
point. The John Pertwee was announced, I think, 6 months after this episode was after this episode aired. I think so. Yeah, they still didn't have an actor to attach the name to. So easily one of the weirdest regeneration scenes ever. Might be the weirdest regeneration scene ever. I'm gonna think about it.
Yes,
But
I agree.
what do you think of it?
Yeah, it completely weird. And the time like Gallifrey has been around for a while. Time Lords, masters of time and space. They're showing pictures, drawings of people that this doctor can turn into. I think, oh, okay, come on, guys. At least just throw random pictures up of people, not just sketched out drawings in a sci-fi show. So yeah, but it's 1960, like you said, 1960
Nine.
1969. So you're like, okay, you
Yeah.
just you have to let it go and stuff like that. But yeah, the spinning faces and stuff like that, I prefer just the light. But I guess if you don't have an actor, if you haven't announced who the actor is, you got to make do the spinning around and stuff like that. Just like when like not even just the faces, but the body spinning around and going into a void and stuff like. Okay, yeah, it's probably my least favorite of the regenerations.
Understandable. Very understandable. But again, that whole episode, it was a 10-part episode, 10-part
Yeah.
serial, and they really, really blew their budget on the other 10 parts. So you can understand why they maybe didn't have enough
Mm.
in the swear jar
Ooh.
uh to put into that episode, to that regeneration scene. And even in that whole image of Gallifrey, a lot of it was very, very dark, mainly because they didn't really have the budget for sets. So they just showed us one or two, three Time Lords in a completely dark room, so they didn't have to build these loud and lavish sets, which you will see used on Gallifrey, particularly during the Fourth Doctor's era. But at that time, they were really just trying to keep Gallifrey a secret, for both to keep the mystery alive and to keep the budget relatively low. But after, on the bright side, after that, we moved on to the proper regenerations, and I believe the regenerations actually started the proper effect
Right.
of the regeneration scene, with the Third Doctor generating into the Fourth Doctor. Uh, Again, no spoilers for the episode Planet of the Spiders, but the Doctor's entire body was completely destroyed from radiation from the Metabulus, the crystals on Metabulus 3. He finally lands home in Unit
Mhm.
HQ in his office, lands smack on the floor, has a one final scene with Sarah Jane and the Brigadier before the incredibly racist yellow face character Kanpo Rinpoche shows up,
Yeah,
and
not cool.
not
I had to.
cool at all.
No, I was like, what are they doing? That's all that keep going in my head. It's like, oh no, 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 you're not doing that, are you? Oh boy,
Yeah, they
but they
did it.
did.
They did that.
They
They
did.
did that. But I will say this: producer Barry Letts at the time, showrunner of the show, pseudo showrunner because they didn't even have that term for the show yet.
Hmm.
He was a self-proclaimed Buddhist, and I recently read an article from all the way back in 1981 about Planet of the Spiders, saying that that whole episode really, in a way, was a metaphor for Buddhism. And if you actually watch the episode and actually read the article itself, it kind of makes sense of the Doctor having to
Doctor's
take.
reaching nirvana.
Yeah, pretty much. It wasn't just a case of the Doctor going into a cave full of irradiated crystals to fight a big giant spider. It was more of a Doctor taking a journey of the soul, in a way, to
Hmm.
find
Inner
sort of
peace.
to find inner peace, to find himself. Ergo, letting go of his past, the third incarnation, and letting in the new self, which is the fourth Doctor. Again, I'll send you the article itself. It's really fascinating hearing the late great Barry Letts talk about that episode in that
Okay.
context. But it was never really one of my favorite episodes from Doctor Who. But after reading that article, I sort of gained a new appreciation to what Barry Letts was trying to tell us in the themes of that episode, and obviously how certain things can corrupt the soul, like what happened to the spiders in that episode. But again, it's no spoilers because you haven't seen it yet. But then after Campo Rinpoche shows up and in a Nirvana pose, rather
Yes.
sitting cross-legged,
Hmm.
rejuvenating the Doctor's cells, giving the process a little push, as he calls it. We're then treated to this, as the Brigadier is saying, well, here we go again.
Hmm.
So, the racism stuff aside,
Yeah.
what else do we have to say about this scene?
I really this yeah this is the most uh of the original run of the series. I'm just gonna say this is the most emotional of the regenerations, and I think Elizabeth Sladen absolutely kills it in that scene. And the Brigadier, the Brigadier is the stiff upper lip British guy who needed to be there just to cut the tension a little bit. So I really did enjoy it, and you could really feel for Sarah Jane when she's watching the Doctor regenerate or about to regenerate, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. So, yeah, my favorite of the first run for
Mm,
sure.
cool. You could even argue that Elizabeth Sladen slayed it.
How dare you, sir? How frigging dare you?
You don't have the authority.
I don't need authority. I have a screwdriver. How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
I can't tell you how much I waited to use that. How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Oh
I
boy.
got I gotta re-edit that one to just say that how dare you. But yeah, the late great John Hurt as the War Doctor, ladies and gentlemen.
Hmm.
But yeah, I completely agree. It's one of the most emotional ones, and there are a couple of other emotional ones that we still have to get to. But
Yeah,
Elizabeth Sladen just
kills it. She
act
was spot on.
again. And unfortunately, all three of the great, wonderful actors and contributors of Doctor Who from that scene are no longer with us, which makes the scene even more sad. But life still goes on,
Hmm.
or in other words, the moment has been prepared for as we prepare to jump into the fourth Doctor's run. Now, the fourth Doctor has had the longest run on television 7 seasons as the Doctor. Think of how many shows don't even make it to 7 seasons on their own. This guy played the same character on the show for 7 seasons in a show that lasted for 39 seasons.
Right.
Just put it really just puts all these things into perspective. But yeah, the whole scene of after the Doctor fighting the Master, he saves the universe yet again with the Pharos Project telescope. Then starts to have visions of all the different villains that he's come across in his legendary 7 season run. And then once he falls all the way down to the floor and manages to somehow land in the very comfortable looking position.
Yeah, I thought he looked. Yeah, he looked relaxed. He looked more relaxed than anything.
Like he fell from a great height, and he's like, he's just chilling there. But then obviously he starts seeing visions of the companions that he's had, starting with Sarah Jane and the Brigadier, Leela, K9, and both Romanas, and obviously Harry Sullivan. Sorry, I forgot about him. Harry Sullivan, or as he calls him,
Harry Sullivan is an imbecile!
I'll never miss an opportunity to reuse that clip. But I feel it's very poetic of just starting with Sarah Jane and ending with the current companion, Adric.
Yeah.
Calling out his name, and then he just looks at them and smiles and says, "It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for." And then we're treated to this scene. Him reaching out to the mysterious figure that's been walking his way through the plot of the episode. Again, no spoilers. The two figures merge, and then just the fourth Doctor retreating into a chrysalis, and then emerging as the newly regenerated fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. And I already got to shut these guys off because they're going to bother us the rest of the...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is what happens when you're being double booked. But yeah. So while I tell them to shut up, let me know what your thoughts on this scene are.
I think that he deserved a better send off. I thought the plot point of just him falling like that was a little contrived. I like and this is the thing or whatever, and it gets brought up in future ones as well with seeing old enemies and seeing companions and stuff like that, which is cool. I think that the actual scenes they're showing of the companion saying "Doctor" and then pausing all the time, pretty cheesy. It's pretty cheesy. But this is 1984, 1981.
1980.
1980. So yeah, so it's it's par for the course. That's what you're getting in 1980. And of course you see K9, so I'm always going to be happy when I see him every time. But yeah, the actual regeneration thing, I liked it. I think having that the watcher or whatever go into the face or whatever, so it can kind of bring it out slowly and stuff like that, and seeing Pete Davidson afterwards is it's a good one. I like it.
It's interesting to me that you say that he deserved a better send off. I think the send off was perfect. I think
just falling like that and landing and just going, eh.
Well, I mean,
I would expect. Well, he's done this work or whatever, and then the soldiers getting up there and the master going through the window, and they're looking around like, where'd he go? I was like, did you guys look out the window? I just think, I think I think they just could have done more for him, especially after a 7-year run. Give him give him more of a heroic style ending and maybe a bigger speech, something like that. It just didn't seem like there was much to him at the end. It wasn't as much about him as it was showing all the clips of all the enemies and companions he had.
Well, I think, hold on, I'll play it again. The image of the Watcher itself walking through different points of the episode and even interacting with the Doctor at certain points of the episode itself, it sort of hints, rather, the Doctor was aware that his time is coming to an end. It's very similar to the David Tennant stuff where he was aware that his time is now ending and his song is ending, as the Ood put it, but
Right.
how it was going to happen, he was never quite sure. So he was still trying to avoid it all throughout the episode, but him, when he's hanging from that big wire and he starts having all these images of the other villains, that was him sort of realizing that his time is now coming to an end and accepting, like the 10th Doctor eventually accepted his fate of just, realizing that I've had a good run and visited by the companions, and the smile that he gives his new companions at the time really just seals the deal for me. Now, obviously, the clips that they chose to use, good looking clips, but the fact that they just said
The
"Doctor"
pause. Yeah. The
and
action
pause,
shot. Action
yeah,
shot.
they could have done that better. They could have done that better. If it was done today, it would have been done better. As a matter of fact, it was done today with Peter Capaldi. Yeah, Stephen Moffat tried to recreate that moment, but seeing with Peter Capaldi, with all the companions from Rose all the way up to Bill and Missy, whether or not you choose to like the decision that he decided to put that in there, that aside, it this is how the scene would have looked like if it was done with today's budgets and today's modern way of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think if you just ignore the awkward, cheesy pauses, it's a really emotional scene. Uh, what we're seeing here, and just introducing the concept of the Watcher, which became a much larger thing in the bigger, wider Doctor Who lore. Uh, just every once in a while, the showrunners just throw something at you that completely changes the lore. It's like, hey, fans, you figure it out. You
Yeah.
figure out how this fits into the canon of Doctor Who.
I was gonna say
Good luck with it.
everything is canon, and it all figures out in somebody's head eventually. So you
Yeah,
just have to,
that's
smile and
yeah,
say,
just
okay, show's still going.
just really wouldn't want to be the poor soul that has to try to make sense of all of this. But yeah, speaking of seeing
Oh boy.
previous companions in a regeneration scene, we are now treated to the longest regeneration scene out of the list of regenerations we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
Fifth Doctor regeneration at the end of the case of Androzani, after being poisoned by Spectrox toxemia at the beginning of the episode, and his health situation deteriorates all throughout several different parts of the episode. I can't remember how many parts are in that episode, but his health situation continues to go worse and worse and worse, trying to get a cure, an anti-venom for it, which eventually he succeeds, but there's only enough for one person. So the Doctor, being the Doctor, does what the Doctor would do and gives the antidote to his companion Perry, and then chooses to retreat into a death-like state, which will then trigger a regeneration. And this was, and of course, we're talking about some later lore that was added after the fact, that the regeneration scene wasn't very certain. It wasn't, the Doctor himself wasn't really sure the regeneration was going to work, but he was then visited once again by the returning companions. This time, they're not going for the action shots and awkward pauses. They actually bring back the actors or actresses to speak to the Doctor in that particular scene. Starting, of course, with Tegan, followed almost immediately by Turlo, and then Chameleon, for God knows what reason,
Yeah.
Nissa Traken, and finally Adric. And with
Yeah.
all five of these companions talking to the Doctor in tandem, trying to convince him to properly regenerate, we're then also treated to the Master
Yeah. So cheesy. I loved
imposing
it.
himself
I
onto the
loved it.
Doctor, imposing himself onto the Doctor, trying to force him to not regenerate. And then we get the best regeneration effects that the 80s visual effects team could muster up at that time.
Sure.
But in a way, it kind of is reminiscent of what the regeneration effects look like today, or rather the beta version of that. And
Mm.
obviously, then we see the face of Colin Baker sprouting out of that explosion of 1980s regeneration effects. What do you think of this?
My second favorite of the early ones. I thought Pete Davidson got a chance to act, and I think he hit it out of the park. It's like as good an acting job as you'll see in Doctor Who. I really enjoyed it. In fact, watching it again yesterday, I was like, God damn, I gotta watch a lot more of the Fifth Doctor now too. But I say that every time I get sent clips or get told, watch some of this or whatever, see the Doctor. It's like I really got to go into this. I wasn't like a big even fan of like the Five Doctors like that special, but now I see what he can do when he has his own lines and stuff like that, and he's just like, okay, go and act this scene, just do something with it. And he really nailed it. I really enjoyed it. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, he gets a lot of moments like that all throughout the episode. The episode itself, on the whole, not one of my favorites, but Peter
Right.
Davison in that episode just sells the regeneration part of it. I
Yep.
think it was one of the big Finnish guys that said that they love regeneration episodes more than most because that is when the Doctor gets the chance to be at his or her most heroic moment, the moment of self-sacrifice.
That's why I was so
And
disappointed with the power of the Doctors. Which I just thought that they did Jodie wrong. I think they could have done way more for Jodie in that episode. Who she was hardly in it, just at the end, kind of just going around and hanging out. Yeah, I thought there could have been a lot more to it, but
but
oh well.
to be fair though, we got a lot of Doctor action in that episode,
Hmm.
and I think when you're naming it "The Power of the Doctor," the name of the episode, it made more sense to have multiple doctors help guide Jodie through her final moments in that episode.
Yeah.
So I was fine with the way the Power of the Doctor turned out. And speaking of people being disappointed, we now have probably the most disappointing regeneration scene of all time. But again, circumstances being what they are at the time, right? So Colin Baker was fired from Doctor Who before he got a chance. I think even before his final season even broadcast. Like
Wow.
it's just a heartbreaking situation where he was forced to continue to do press work for Doctor Who for months, knowing that he's not coming back, and just the BBC really did him dirty with that whole situation. So much so that he outright refused to come back and film his regeneration scene in in the next episode, which is why Sylvester McCoy, the new Doctor, had to step in and just be the Sixth Doctor in the Sixth Doctor outfit, wearing that long, ridiculous fake wig and some very carefully placed CGI to hide, or rather, do the best work to hide Sylvester McCoy's face in that scene as
Yeah.
we see him being flipped over by Tetrap, and you can clearly see that it's McCoy, but the CGI is trying to hide it as the wig comes off, and it's Sylvester's face. I mean, it's my least favorite regeneration scene, but
Yeah, it's not great.
putting the context into perspective, I get it. And Colin Baker has since regretted not coming back to do that scene. Greatly regretted doing not coming back. But I mean, sometimes these circumstances just happen.
You got
Um,
to feel for him. Like, yeah, it must be hard, especially when you lose your job. It wasn't his choice to leave. He was told to leave, and it's like, yeah, it really is too bad. I thought that scene is unintentionally funny, just to see that white, 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 white face. Uh, yeah, I didn't know that was Sylvester McCoy under that makeup though. I just thought that was just somebody under a ton of makeup, and then they just scrubbed the makeup off or whatever. But yeah, not a great scene. Not a great scene at all.
Yeah, and I think he was told that he was fired through a phone call or something stupid like that.
Classy,
Like,
classy,
come on.
gutless.
But hey, that was the BBC in the mid '80s, I guess.
I guess you're
Now,
right.
Sylvester McCoy was the last Doctor to be in the um, on the show itself proper, but his regeneration scene did not happen as part of the TV show. It happened as part of the movie, and we normally don't talk about the movie in the first week of a month doing this show because we try to focus on just the classic series
Right.
and we save the movie for like week 3. But we could not really finish talking about this episode without at least bringing up this scene from the movie with Sylvester McCoy desperately trying to scratch his nose before regenerating into Paul McGann.
Mm-hmm.
And then that scene that was very carefully intercut with Frankenstein. I
Yeah.
think watching that scene in and of itself, the Frankenstein stuff is really, really great to set up the atmosphere for the scene. And this being a regeneration sequence in the movie, still it cements its role as a part of Doctor Who mythology and Doctor Who history, Doctor Who lore. Just movie itself ended up being what it is. But what do you think about this regeneration scene? I like the effect of just
Yeah.
the wavy, just this right here, the wave changing of the face effect. It's a cool looking
Yes.
effect, but
Yeah, so like a magician, not showing his tricks and stuff like that with the flashes of light or whatever that helps go. I was telling you before, I really like it. I think it looks like the most natural, especially of the early ones, the most natural looking regeneration, where there's no, well, you're still getting some lightning and stuff like that, but there's no fire, there's no big flash of glowing light and stuff like that, and just a quick, easy phase out. I like the fact that they were doing the face thing and they kind of match it up at the end. I was surprised at how much Sylvester McCoy and McGann looked like each other when they were doing it too. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and that kind of like the Skeletor kind of look as well going through it. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun one.
yeah, this was really before they started making regeneration scenes themselves as flashy and effects heavy as they are in
Yeah.
the modern series. Um, Anything else to add for the scene before we move on?
Just when it goes afterwards and showing like his strength when he was getting out of that morgue. Oh my god!
Yeah,
And you don't see that too often from the Doctor. Just that pure strength, nailing a solid metal door with punch holes in it until the thing
well, to
blows
be
off its
fair, he
head
was
screen.
he was bursting with regeneration energy at the time.
That's true.
I mean, we see a doctor literally regrow a hand, so there's really no telling what regeneration energy could do. In Let's Kill Hitler, River Song, which uses the regeneration energy to blast a group of Nazis flat on their backs.
Hmm.
So yeah, regeneration energy can do a lot. In some of the other scenes of just the Doctor exploding into regeneration energy inside the TARDIS blows up the interior of the TARDIS. The
And,
11th Doctor using it to obliterate a Dalek fleet completely. So
right.
yeah, there's no telling what one
It
can do
must
with
be
that kind of energy.
it going into my head because there was no expelling of the energy and stuff like that. It was all self-contained and stuff. So it makes a lot more sense now that I'm thinking about it. He didn't burst any energy out through his hands or through his head or wherever else it would go. Unfortunately, he just using brute strength to knock the door off. So, uh, and now listening to all the Big Finish episodes of his and stuff like that, it kind of makes me think of him in a bit of a different light. But yeah, I think it's one of the more fun regeneration scenes that we went through today.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the Eighth Doctor is one that did not have a regeneration scene for many, many years until finally he got one in the Night of the Doctor. But that is a story for another time. So I think we talked about enough regenerations today. We got plenty more to talk about in the next few weeks. But until we get there, any final thoughts before we say our plugs and goodbye?
Just imagine what they would have done with a budget. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, especially some of the uh, '80s ones. Like, imagine like the Pete Davidson one if it had a budget. Imagine the second Dr. Patrick Troughton's if he had a budget for that. I think they did a really good job with the first one. So yeah, if they would have had more than the 60-70 bucks that they made every episode with, what they could have done, just because I think that the people they had involved uh, was what they had to work with, did an absolutely remarkable job, except for maybe the you know
The six.
the sixth Doctor. But what are you gonna do? Oh boy,
Yeah, but to be fair, though,
nice wig.
we're working in such a tight budget and making and coming out looking with incredibly cheesy effects. That is kind of part of Doctor Who's charm, and that is the reason why the show continues to endure to this day. So,
I love the cheese. I love the cheese.
bring on the cheese.
Oh my god.
So why don't you cheese up the place by telling us where people can find you?
Oh, why don't you guys find me here on the Northern Entertainment Group every Tuesday? Have you seen this? The television show. Daniel's back. Somehow he got out of the deep dark cave that Disney had him stranded in for a while. I'll be talking to some people about it. Not too sure how that happened, but so glad to see him. Glad that he's back. So we're talking TV over there. You can find me doing lots of stuff on the Let's Get Ready Network. Starting 11, we've been going a couple days a week now with World Cup recaps. Getting into the new channel there on YouTube, LGR The Highlights. So follow us over there. Like, subscribe, do all those things with it when you're there.
Thank you. And you can find me every Monday talking about the greatest show in the galaxy on this show, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, as well as Northern Countdown every Saturday with Soda and Ben. Soda and Ben also have their own show on this channel called Northern Rewind, which I will be guest starring on, talking about the movie Aladdin, which I suppose by the time this comes out, this will already have been on the channel. So maybe I'm getting my dates mixed up. But yeah, you can also find me on my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek. You can, first of all, check out that big, almost 2-hour video of just Regeneration that I uploaded a couple of weeks ago. I was hoping to coincide with the release of The Power of the Doctor, but the BBC took it down because they're,
Monsters.
yeah, because they're a stupid company that threw out a bunch of episodes of Doctor Who to the trash, and they're regretting it till this very day. But what are you going to do? But also, I also do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way up to 2022, as well as some other stuff whenever I have time to, like some trailer reactions that I just did recently for what was it? The
Guardians
Indiana
of the
Jones
Galaxy.
5 and Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Super Mario Brothers movie. So go ahead and check those out. And also check out a good friend of the show, Taco, over on his channel, Something to Talk About. And speaking of soda, he also has another show on this channel called The Squared Slice, as well as another show called The Blokes of Wrestling over on the Let's Get Ready Network. I think that's about it. So let us regenerate into our next incarnation with next week. And I'll leave you off with this wonderful outro that's been the outro for the show since its inception. Thank you for watching, and the moment has been prepared for. Goodbye.